we doing? So this is going to be a really simple 101 tutorial on subtractive synthesis. Okay, so I am going to find myself this Retro Synth. There it is. And just close that. You can see here I've got this little oscilloscope plug-in, so we can kind of have a look at how these waveforms appear. And I have got myself a really simple bit of MIDI here, just, you know, one note. All right, so let's get our heads around this synth. Okay, we're going to have a look at envelopes, ADSR, and see what the hell all this stuff means. Okay, we'll come back to that in a sec. So first things first, I have opened this Retro Synth. As you can see, it defaults to what you see right before your very eyes. We've got these two shape dials here. These are both oscillators. So they oscillate and they generate sound for us. And look, we are either going to be hearing oscillator 1 or just oscillator 2, that one. Yeah, or both in the middle there, 50 odd percent. Okay, let's just hear oscillator 1. And so by default, as you can see, it's set to this little sawtooth wave. Okay, so if I hit play, it's playing through that MIDI. Look, freeze that. You can see that it's generating this sawtooth waveform for us each time a note is struck. So we'll think about why that is and what that means at another point in time. So I'll unfreeze that. Let's just carry on. Okay, so if I switch it up to this square wave, you can hear that the tone changes fairly drastically. It's now capturing a square wave. Okay, it's got a few other settings. What's it got? It's got white noise, strangely enough. Okay, we'll come back to that. Now this setting from this square to this kind of offset square. See, as I drift through that, you get a nice kind of phasiness. Well, that's square wave modulation. It's offsetting the, flip from positive to negative as we cycle through the waveform. Again, what all that means we'll worry about another time. Let's just see what we can do with this amplitude envelope right here. Okay. I press play. No. So if we look at this. Okay, ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release. Okay, so every time you strike a note on a keyboard, how fast it gets up to fully loud is the attack time. And then when you let go, how long it takes to get from as loud as it was to silence is the release time. And then whilst you hold the key down, the sustain level dictates how loud the note will just hang there being. Okay, so what does that mean? So look, if I flip over to this bit of MIDI here. Oops. Okay, so it's a kind of slightly weird melody going on. Let's see how the ADSR affects that every time a note is struck. Okay. So you can see as the attack time gets longer and longer, it takes longer and longer for the note to get fully loud. You can make it so long that the length of MIDI doesn't give us time for it to get fully loud, like so. Okay, and if you put it on 0 or instantaneous, it's just instantly brick wall as loud as it will get. Yeah, and then look, decay and sustain. So if I kind of move this down, you can see that the sustain time will be much quieter than the attack time. So listen to it now. Hear that the initial attack is very sudden, and then it just kind of gets quieter and hangs there at this loudness. Okay, and you can dictate how long the decay time should be by going from left to right, like so. See that? And then, of course, the release time is how long the note takes to reach silence once you let go of the key. So if I put that up super big and press play and then stop, so I press stop and it's just slowly getting quieter. 10 seconds it's taking. Okay, so if we just kind of make a brick wall envelope, it's just on off, it's like a light switch now, just straight on, fully loud, and as soon as you hit stop it stops. Here we go. Okay, so that particular envelope can be useful for, you know, certain kinds of sounds. We might want some slightly more organic-y kind of a feel to the loudness. So as an interesting quirk, maybe, look, if I just choose the default again, you can see it's just jumped back to these default amplitude settings. Here they are again. Cool. So you guys get amplitude envelopes now, and envelopes in general, because we can see here's a filter envelope. Let's have a look at this filter section next. So we're back to our little basic baseline. So look, here's an EQ plugin. I'm just going to kind of show you, using this EQ plugin, what this filter section does. Okay, this will make sense in a sec. So if I throw in this high cut filter, you can see that as I sweep down the frequencies lower and lower and lower, it's removing here all the high frequencies as we sweep through. Okay, so if I keep going, the sound is going to disappear altogether. So look at that. I've kind of scooped out pretty much everything now using EQ, using this EQ, which is set to this high cut setting. Okay. So what's good about doing that is if you get this moving in real time somehow, some kind of wacky way in time with your bass line. Here we go. Listen. You can see I'm doing it manually. Okay, so this filter that I'm using here, I'm now going to turn that off, is standard stuff in a synthesizer. So look, we have this low pass 24 decibel filter setting. What does that mean? So it's the same here. I pull that down, it's slowly cutting all the higher frequencies. So like, how can we get this kind of moving? Okay, well, this filter has got its own filter envelope. So as you now know, envelopes, they dictate what the loudness should do through time. So let's apply that kind of science there to this filter section. And as you can see, there's an envelope dial here. Okay, so it's set to 0. If I slowly dial this in, it's telling this filter section to respond to this more and more so as I dial that in. So it's got this 100 millisecond attack. So it's kind of going up and down over 100 milliseconds every time the note is struck. Okay, and this dial is how extreme do you want that to sound. Here we go. So I'm just kind of finding a sweet spot that I like. So even though you can't see it moving, it's as if this is going up and down now, responding to this. If I make this attack time slower, it's doing it less so, because the notes aren't lasting long enough. So here, as I slowly decrease that, there's a kind of nice spot right there. Okay, I can increase the cutoff back up a bit. So we can get a really nice movement in our sound every time the note is struck, i.e. using envelopes or envelopes. Alright, so we haven't said much about this res. What the hell is res? Okay, well that's the resonance, and that just kind of amplifies the cutoff point. Okay, so as I increase that, you can hear that kind of screaming resonance is introduced more and more so. And with it gone completely, that's actually quite nice. So resonance, we've got to consider using that sparingly. It can be very interesting. Hear that? Just a tiny bit of resonance, just to sort of drive, distort, as it were, the cutoff point. Okay, so let's keep going. We're only listening to this first oscillator at the moment. If I slide through to oscillator 2, we're now hearing a slightly different sound. We could put this second oscillator on this sawtooth. And as you can hear, as we drift between those two, we get some interesting tonalities potentially. So here's a crazy thought. Why don't we put this second oscillator an octave up? 12. Okay. And then just have a bit of it coming through, 2 at the same time. Hear that? It's just a kind of nice octavizing to the whole thing now. And actually, if you offset this second oscillator by just a few cents, we will talk about cents another time, you just introduce a little bit of phasey width, I suppose. Okay, now let's look at something down here. Look at these settings. Look at this button here. I'm going to click on that. Let's make a few adjustments to our kind of global settings. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on to 2 or perhaps even 4 voices. And in some sense, this is as if simply just duplicating these oscillators out, stacking more versions on top of each other. I'm going to dial in some stereo spread and the tiniest bit of detuning. And listen now to how much bigger, thicker, broader the sound has got overall. Here we go. And then check this out. This is a little sine wave sub that you can kind of add to the sound. Okay, so look, it says sine level. So as I dial this in, you'll hear this bass line that we're making getting more and more subbier. Here we go. So pretty, hardcore, pretty immense with that dialed in 100%. Okay, so let's just delete that. sub the frequencies that we've added. You know, so it's a nice enough sound at the moment. It's dead simple. A little bit of filter, obeying this envelope. Check it out down here. We've got this vibrato section, which is sitting there chugging along at 5 Hertz. Okay, so if I slowly dial this in, you'll hear it vibratoing. Here we go. Okay, so it doesn't sound great on a bass line, but we know it's there. Okay, now, what about LFO? Okay, so LFO, low frequency oscillator. I'm going to put this on a square wave so we can really hear what this crazy thing does. Okay, this is, well, if I press K to hear the click, hear the metronome there. Yeah, we're going along at 120. Well, this low frequency oscillator is set to this musical value of half. So as if a minim, I guess. Okay, and as I sweep through that, we can switch it up. So let's put it on eighths. You can kind of see it going dugga 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 dugga. Okay, so if I slowly dial this LFO in, it's going to be forcing this to kind of switch between 2 places within this range. Let's hear that. Just turn the metronome off. Here we go again. Now you can hear that just about, but I'm going to switch back to this melody. Okay, so you can really hear that doing it. It's as if that's kind of jumping from here and then just switching to about here and then back and back. Yeah, at this speed and by this much. So really a lot or barely noticeable. Here we go. So that's kind of interesting. Just adding more and more interest to the overall sound that we're making. And then look down here. The filter itself can also listen to this LFO. Okay, so I can dial in how much of this LFO we want to hear in and get the filter kind of switching back and forth between 2 ranges. Here we go. Actually, first of all, look, what I'll do is I'll remove it here. So I'm going to hold down Alt, yeah, or Option, and click on that. And it resets it to its default value. Okay, let's hear it doing stuff to the filter now. Kind of interesting. There you go, hear it on triplets. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting thing. We can mess around with LFOs. We can get LFOs to tell this filter to do things, or we can get envelopes to tell this LFO to do things, or both. And we can do the same here with filters and LFOs. So this is a unipolar dial. It's either how much envelope do you want here, or how much LFO do you want here to affect this oscillator. Yep, so we're back to our kind of, you know, boring bass line now. Let's just check out these little effects. This is just as if a guitarist having plugins. You should be able to tell that instantly lots of width and chorus has appeared in the sound. So lots, hardly any. And it has a flanger as well. obviously mixes how much do you want mixed in with the original sound. Okay, so you can kind of already see that just with a few little, you know, modular sections here, we can create all manner of crazy sounds. Okay, good stuff.